The scorching Manila sun punished the crowded streets as Manny Pacquiao walked discreetly through the Quiapo district. Despite his worldwide fame as a boxing legend and influential politician, he liked to stay connected with the reality of Philippine streets, the place he came from and never forgot. Dressed in simple clothes, a white t-shirt, faded jeans, and a discreet cap pulled over his eyes, Manny could pass almost unnoticed among the crowd of street vendors and hurried passers-by. The memory of his own childhood in extreme poverty in General Santos City never left him, even after winning 8 world titles in different weight classes and amassing considerable wealth. Every corner of those popular streets reminded him of when he slept in cardboard boxes and went days without a complete meal, feeling the same hunger he saw stamped on the faces of so many of his compatriots. It was then that his eyes caught a scene that seemed like a mirror of his own past. An extremely thin boy, no more than 8 years old, sitting on the sidewalk in front of a popular restaurant. The boy's skin was marked by street dirt, his disheveled hair partially covering large, sad eyes that longingly observed the plates passing to other tables while he timidly extended his hand to passers-by, being ignored by almost everyone. Manny's heart tightened in a way that not even the hardest blows he had received in the ring had managed to achieve. At that moment, it wasn't the world champion or the senator who was observing the boy, but rather the poor kid from General Santos who knew the pain of hunger and social invisibility. Without hesitation, he changed his path and slowly approached. The little one, noticing the details that only someone who has lived in misery recognizes: the barefoot feet with marks of injuries, clothes mended several times, and especially the look that mixed hope and resignation. The boy, whom Manny would later discover was named Miguel, didn't immediately raise his gaze when a shadow covered his small space on the sidewalk. Accustomed to being ignored or worse, expelled from places, he kept his head down, just extending his trembling hand. To his surprise, instead of coins, he felt a gentle hand rest on his shoulder, finally making him raise his eyes and find the face of a man who seemed vaguely familiar, but whom Miguel, in his young age and social isolation, couldn't identify as the legendary Pac-Man. The boy's state of malnutrition was evident to someone who knew the signs: the subtle swelling in the abdomen contrasting with skeletal limbs, the paleness of the mucous membranes, the brittle and lusterless hair. Manny felt an urgency that went beyond simple momentary charity. Without making a fuss, he sat down beside the boy on the sidewalk, completely ignoring the curious glances from the few who were beginning to recognize him, and asked in a low tone if Miguel was hungry, receiving only a timid nod in response. With calm gestures so as not to frighten the distrustful boy, Manny stood up and entered the simple restaurant, returning minutes later with not just one plate, but a bag full of enough food for several days. The look of disbelief on the boy's face when he received that unexpected treasure made the boxer feel a lump in his throat. Miguel began to eat with a mixture of desperation and gratitude, trying to hide the food with his body, a behavior that Manny instantly recognized, the fear that someone might take the food away at any moment. As he watched the boy eat, Pacquiao remained silent, protecting him with his presence, but his mind was working quickly. This would not just be another act of passing charity, like so many he had done over the years. Something in Miguel's determined look, even amid misery, reminded him of himself, and a decision was beginning to form in his heart, a decision that would change not only that boy's life, but would touch millions of people around the world. Chati. The days that followed, Manny returned to the same place, discovering that Miguel had no family, just an elderly, sick grandmother who could barely take care of herself, let alone an energetic boy. They lived in an improvised shack on the outskirts of Manila, surviving on the little that the boy could get by begging on the streets. The story, sadly common in the Philippines, wasn't just statistics for Pacquiao. It was a painful reflection of his own journey and that of so many other children invisible to society's eyes. With the discretion he had learned to value over years of fame, Manny didn't announce his intentions or seek publicity for his actions. Instead, he arranged for Miguel to receive immediate medical attention, revealing that, besides severe malnutrition, the boy suffered from intestinal parasites and profound anemia, The medical team, recognizing the famous sponsor, treated the case with absolute priority, extending care also to the boy's grandmother, who was diagnosed with untreated diabetes and heart problems. While medical treatments followed their course, Manny used his influence not to obtain privileges, but to accelerate bureaucratic processes that would normally take months. Documents were regularized, social workers mobilized, and a small but dignified house was rented in a safe neighborhood. The boxer made a point of personally supervising every detail, visiting Miguel and his grandmother regularly, always away from the press's eyes. What most impressed the small team that Pacquiao involved in the case was how he insisted on actively participating, not just as a distant financier. During visits, he would sit on the floor to talk with Miguel about the boy's dreams, bring school books, and encourage studies as an absolute priority. The physical transformation of the boy was beginning to become visible, his cheeks gaining color, his gaze more lively. The first genuine smiles appearing on his face, previously marked only by survival. A month after their first meeting, Miguel already looked like another child. Enrolled in a school near his new residence, uniformed and carrying a backpack with complete school supplies, the boy, once invisible on the streets, now walked with firmer steps, still shy, but visibly transformed. His grandmother, with her health stabilized thanks to proper treatment, could now prepare simple meals and accompany her grandson in his new routine, both still amazed at the sudden change in their lives. What neither of them knew was that Manny Pacquiao had gone far beyond immediate help. Silently, he had established a trust fund to guarantee Miguel's complete education, from elementary school to university, should that be his desire. He had also provided a small business for the boy's grandmother, a convenience store in the Imai neighborhood that could be managed without great physical effort, providing dignity and financial independence to the family. The story could have ended there, as one of the many charitable actions the boxer carried out away from the spotlight. However, during a visit to Miguel's school to check on his progress, something unexpected happened. A teacher, moved by recognizing the famous visitor, asked Manny to share some words of inspiration with the students. Reluctant at first, the boxer eventually accepted, provided there would be no photographers or media coverage. In a simple classroom, before children from humble backgrounds similar to his own, Pacquiao spoke not about his titles or wealth, but about his childhood in extreme poverty. He told of nights of hunger, days selling cigarettes on the streets to help his family, and how sports became his salvation. Without directly mentioning Miguel, he spoke about how every child in the Philippines deserved a chance, regardless of where they were born. The improvised speech, coming from the heart, left not only the children in respectful silence, but also the teachers present with tears in their eyes, including one who discreetly recorded the moment on his cell phone. The video of Manny Pacquiao's emotional speech at Miguel's school leaked onto social media. Contrary to the boxer's desire for discretion, in less than 48 hours, it reached millions of views worldwide. Commentators noted the genuine emotion in his voice when speaking about child hunger, without realizing it was motivated by Miguel's specific case, who remained protected from media exposure. Journalists began to investigate the reason for Pacquiao's visit to that specific school in a simple Manila neighborhood. Pressured by reporters and seeing the opportunity to transform an unwanted situation into something positive, Manny made a calculated decision. In a hastily convened press conference, he announced the creation of the New Dawn Initiative, a comprehensive program to combat child malnutrition in the Philippines. The boxer committed a substantial sum from his own assets and called on business people and celebrities to join the cause, using his influence for a purpose greater than himself. Behind the scenes, Pacquiao ensured that Miguel's identity remained protected, allowing only his story, without identifiable names or images, to be used. As an example of the national problem that the initiative intended to address, the public response was overwhelming. In just 1 week, enough donations to feed 10,000 children for a year were raised, with promises of continued support coming from various parts of the world. What began as a casual encounter on the streets of Manila was now transforming into a national movement. Nutritionists, doctors, and educators offered themselves as volunteers for the program. Politicians from different spectrums, recognizing the popular appeal of the initiative, committed to legislative changes to prioritize child nutrition in the national budget. Manny, accustomed to the spotlight for his sporting and political achievements, now found himself at the center of a social revolution, inspired by a small boy whose name the public didn't even know. 6 months after the initial encounter, the New Dawn Initiative had established nutrition centers in 20 Philippine provinces, serving more than 50,000 children with daily meals and regular medical monitoring. The program, designed by public health and child nutrition experts, went beyond food. It included nutritional education for families, community gardens in schools, and a monitoring system to prevent school dropout related to hunger. Miguel, now recovered from malnutrition and flourishing in his studies, didn't know he had been the initial spark for that national transformation. Manny made a point of visiting him regularly, always discreetly, monitoring his progress and marveling at how quickly the boy absorbed knowledge. The grandmother, proudly managing the small neighborhood store, frequently shared with customers how her life had completely changed, attributing the change to an angel who appeared when they needed most, never revealing Pacquiao's identity. The story gained international dimension when the UN recognized the New Dawn Initiative as a model to be replicated in other developing countries. Invitations for Manny to share the experience came from nations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The boxer, using his global fame to amplify the message, transformed each international interview into a platform to discuss not his boxing titles, but the child hunger crisis affecting millions of children around the world. At a special event at the United Nations, Pacquiao surprised everyone by announcing he would donate half of his personal fortune to expand the initiative globally. In his speech without mentioning names, he spoke about how the gaze of a single hungry child on the streets of Manila had awakened in him the urgency to act on a much larger scale. Journalists noticed how his voice broke when mentioning that sometimes it takes just a moment of genuine human connection to trigger a revolution of compassion, without knowing he was referring to the moment he sat beside Miguel on that sidewalk. Months before, the impact of the initiative in the Philippines began to show measurable results when the first independent studies revealed a 15% reduction in the child malnutrition rate in areas served by the program. Participating schools reported significant improvement in academic performance and reduced absenteeism. Stories of individual transformation, similar to Miguel's, but each with its particularities, emerged from different provinces, creating a multiplier effect of hope. In a surprising gesture that captured the imagination of the global public, international celebrities and elite athletes began what they called the Pacquiao Challenge, publicly committing to dedicate personal time, not just money, to combat child hunger in their own countries. The movement, born spontaneously on social media, quickly spread to all forms of media, with public figures documenting their direct experiences with children in vulnerable situations. Miguel, now turning 9 and unaware of his role as the initial inspiration, continued his personal transformation. Physically and emotionally recovered, he stood out at school not only academically, but also for his genuine desire to help colleagues with difficulties. The seed of empathy, planted by Manny's example, naturally flourished in the boy who, even without knowing, had helped change the lives of thousands of other children. During one of the regular visits to Miguel's house, Manny brought a special gift, children's boxing gloves, after discovering the boy's growing interest in the sport. The moment when he was teaching the basic movements to the boy in the small backyard of the house was accidentally recorded by a neighbor who recognized the famous boxer. The image, published on social networks with respect for Miguel's privacy, showing only silhouettes against the sunset, became a powerful symbol of the initiative's message. It wasn't just about feeding bodies, but nurturing dreams and potential. On the first anniversary of the initial encounter on the streets of Manila, the New Dawn Initiative had transformed into a global movement present in 12 countries, with partnerships established with governments, international organizations, and private companies. The Philippine model, centered not only on food distribution but on creating sustainable nutrition and education systems, was now studied as a success case in public health universities around the world. Manny Pacquiao, in a special documentary, produced by an international network, finally shared Miguel's complete story, with the family's permission and with care to protect his privacy. The moving narrative of the casual encounter that triggered a global revolution of compassion touched millions of viewers. At the end of the documentary, Pacquiao revealed that the experience had transformed not only Miguel's life, but also his own, redefining his purpose beyond sports and politics. The most emotional moment of the documentary occurred when Miguel, now speaking confidently before the cameras but with his face protected, expressed his desire to one day be able to help other children as he had been helped. The boy who once begged for food on the streets now dreamed of becoming a doctor, inspired by the professionals who cared for his nutritional recovery. His horizon, previously limited to daily survival, had expanded to possibilities he would never have imagined. In the closing of the documentary, scenes of healthy children in nutritional centers around the world were interspersed with images of Manny and Miguel boxing together in the backyard, symbolizing the greater fight that transcended the ring. The final message, narrated by Pacquiao, summarized the lesson that touched hearts on all continents. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to stop and really see someone the world has made invisible. We never know how a moment of genuine compassion can trigger waves of transformation that reach shores we can't even imagine. The journey that began with a hungry boy and a disguised boxer on the streets of Manila had transformed into a global movement that would continue to grow, nourishing not only bodies but also hope on a scale that no one could have predicted.
If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.